Welcome to Soul Loom, a space where the threads of lived experience, energy, and insight are gently woven into a path of remembering, reconnection, and becoming. There are seasons in life where nothing looks wrong on the outside. You're still capable, still functioning, still meeting expectations, and you're still holding everything together. But internally, something has shifted. Not dramatically, not visibly, but unmistakably. The effort is different. The cost is different. And the access you once had to yourself feels further away. Not because you failed, but because something within you has reached capacity. My guest today is Dr. Julie Merriman. Julie is a PhD, a licensed professional counsellor, supervisor, and counsellor educator, an author, and a speaker who has spent more than 2 decades working in clinical practice, higher education, and professional development. Her work focuses specifically on high-achieving professional women who are over 50, women who have spent decades holding responsibility, leading, caregiving, and sustaining others, and who now find themselves experiencing burnout, nervous system depletion, loss of desire, emotional flatness, or a growing disconnection from themselves. Julie is also the author of In the Pursuit of Soul Joy, which is a 12-week guide to overcoming burnout and compassion fatigue. And her forthcoming book, Are We Going to Have Sex or What?, explores desire and intimacy in midlife through a nervous system-informed lens. She also hosts 2 podcasts, Compassion Fatigue Cure and Sexy After 50, where she explores how nervous system overload reshapes identity, aliveness, and connection over time. Her work is grounded in what she calls a nervous system-first framework, helping women understand that burnout is not mindset failure, but physiological responses to sustained responsibility. Julie, welcome to Soul Loom.
Thank you. I
I
am
can
so honored to be here, Michelle.
I can feel myself within so many of those words that I just read out in your bio, and I know that there's going to be my listeners who are going to be sitting there going, "Oh my God, this is me."
It was me.
And it was me too. So one of the things that really has stood out to me in your work is how precisely you've actually named this experience that so many of us live in our inside, but we don't necessarily have any language for. From the outside, we still look really intact and competent and dependable, and we're still doing all the things that we've always done and what is expected of us. But
Right.
inside, that relationship to ourselves is shifting. And it's not because we've lost our capacity and our capability. So for those people who are listening, who still feel like they're fully functioning outside, they look perfectly fine, what's actually happening internally to their nervous systems?
That's a great question. And so many of us get stuck in this. Our nervous system, what I mean by operating past capacity, our nervous system is operating using emergency physiology as a lifestyle. So if we look at Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, we should be able to go from a active survival state back to a resting state. But those of us that, especially as high overachievers, that, we gals that just, we're going to do this and that and this. And so we're performing all these things. But when we get stuck in this survival state, it looks like that sympathetic drive, adrenaline, cortisol, overfunctioning that eventually freezes us in this survival state. And when we get in that state, we're numb. There's emotional numbness. I can remember that happening. I had just done a big stage presentation, standing ovation. I should have felt like $1 million. And girl, I was numb inside. That was the moment it really hit me. What is wrong with me? But that's what happens when you're operating past capacity. You have reduced tolerance for stimulation. You have brain fog, increased illness. Your immune system is going to be really taxed. I ended up with breast cancer. I mean, we all these things can be tied back to being stuck in that survival state that our nervous system will take us to. It's just doing its job, right? Its job is to, the brain wants to protect us and the nervous system wants to protect us. So it's trying to function and keep up with us. But then it gets stuck there and we shrink. The person of us starts shrinking.
Yeah, it sounds like I know just to me, I can go back and relive those times where I have felt that. And I think we just keep pushing it down because there's so many things as women that we have on our plate that for us to suddenly stop and go, no, no, I need to put everything on hold and put myself at the forefront. We we either don't know how, we don't feel we can. And
Right.
yeah, that system overload, and you're right, it's medically and scientifically proven that the more you push all of that emotion down, the more often it will come out physiologically, such as breast cancer or other forms of chronic illness and pain. So I think so many people listening are going to resonate with what you're saying. So when someone has spent decades being the reliable one, and it is decades because normally that responsibility level usually tends to start in our mid 20s, early 30s when we've become partners or parents, or we've got aging parents that we're now responsible for and probably children. What changes first when the nervous system can no longer sustain that role in that way? Is it emotional? Is it physical? Is it subtle? Like what tends to be the things that people can be experiencing but not be aware of?
Oh, that's such a good question. You know, the first change isn't behavioral, it's tolerance.
Mm,
We lose tolerance for noise, for touch, for requests, emotional intensity, even small disruptions. Just that irritable kind of crankiness comes up. That's a huge clue for us to stop and go, wait, why was this okay and now it's not? What has happened to my level of tolerance? We used to handle everything. Suddenly, we're irritated by very minor demands. And it's not a personality shift, it's a narrowing of that window of tolerance. The nervous system, it's conserving energy, it's doing what it's designed to do. And it's saying, I cannot metabolize this much input anymore. And often this is going to show up before visible burnout. The capable one becomes more reactive, relationships, we become more withdrawn, less available, less flexible. And it feels like you're becoming someone you don't even recognize anymore. I can remember that. I
mm,
talk about it in my book. I woke up and I was like, who am I? Where did I
mm,
go? I
mm.
longed for myself. But in reality, it's the nervous system finally signaling limits that have been ignored for decades. It doesn't just happen overnight.
And I'm assuming with that that we're also experiencing very plain insight physical symptoms. So fatigue,
Oh, yeah.
probably not feeling like you have any appetite, headaches, migraines, neck pain, all of those symptoms that correlate to that emotional, pushing that emotional self down.
Yeah, that emotional dysregulation. And also, Michelle, we have become so good at ignoring not only our emotions, our the signs when I don't know if you've ever looked at your calendar and thought, oh my, who did that to me? I don't have the energy to
Yes,
get all that.
even now, every day.
Yeah. Well, but but as we are in this state of, as you're saying, some physical symptoms are going to come up, absolutely. But we have become so disembodied. We've become these floating heads of competence, if you will, that we're
Mm,
even numb to some of those things that are happening in our body. I mean, as I work with the women I work with, because I do a lot of chakra psychology, along with bioenergetic work, which is, to get us embodied. I'm a somatic therapist. And as I ask them, okay, you're talking about anxiety. Tell me where you're feeling that in your body. They're lost. They can't identify it. They can think it, but they're not feeling it. So we spend a lot of time trying to get them re-embodied because feelings happen in our body. I mean, and those physiological things, symptoms, as you spoke of course they're happening, but sadly, some of us are so disembodied, we're not feeling them.
So also because you're working primarily with women in that 50-ish age group. And I know for a lot of women, it kind of can start earlier. It can be the early 40s or 45s where we start to go into that perimenopause and then right into that menopause phase.
Right.
We then have all of the, and I use the term reluctantly, symptoms that start to come onto us through that hormonal change. What layer does that then add onto this?
Such a good question. So, I work with gals as young as 30 that are experiencing burnout. But what happens as we hit that perimenopause, menopause state? Our estrogen used to be such a good buffer. You think of a house full of kids and we're juggling this and running that, and we could handle that stress and we bounce back pretty quick. But as we lose that estrogen veil, that estrogen barrier, it's not the right word, but that estrogen that we had, it really helps our brain. It helps our brain function. It's a big player in our brain function. But as we lose that, that intolerance is going to come out. We're not going to be able to handle that stress like we used to.
I had somebody that I interviewed on the podcast last year. And for any of the listeners who haven't heard that episode, it was with Jane Hardwick Collins. She talked about estrogen as being our mild sedative, that suddenly when it's starting to go into depletion, we don't have, as you've said, we don't have that numbing factor anymore, which is why our intolerance starts to increase because the thing that's kept us level is now moving into depletion. Yeah, so it's really interesting. It doesn't matter how you frame it, it's still having the same physiological effect on our systems.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And things that we could once tolerate, we're not, well, just, and that's years of compounding stress, right?
Mm.
By the time it hits us, like, no wonder we don't recognize ourselves at times. I mean, we've been set up to, especially those of us that run a full life. Well, I guess we've been set up to really have a hard hit when we get into our menopause stage.
And I think too, our response to all of that when it's happening, and I say for us because it's meant to be, I'm a strong believer that, midlife and all of the associated things that we feel and have happened to us in those moments, they're sort of like that midlife reset that's telling us that, this is kind of not the human experience you chose to have when you came here. And so we're now giving you a little bit of a slap across the back of the head for you to do a stock take and realize that what you've been doing in the past isn't working. And the idea is that we then stop and we pivot and we move back into a space of ourselves and enjoying our life and having joy. But unfortunately, because of the way we are culturally and everything else, we will continue to ignore it and we will continue to push through. Why is that path that we choose so not healthy for us?
Well, first I want to answer or just underscore something you said. Menopause can be an absolute homecoming and rebirth, an amazing time of our life. It just so we have to be ready to embrace that. We're not done, right? We've got lots more to do. But if we try to push through this, if we try to mindset our way through this, if we try to think, well, let me just use discipline, that's going to require that prefrontal cortex. And when we're in this state, that's not fully available. Capacity lives in the autonomic nervous system. So we're not going to think our way out of the burnout, out of this place that we find ourselves. When someone's operating past capacity, their body is in, again, that survival mode. So even blood flow shifts. Isn't that crazy? How our nervous system, it's so powerful. As you mentioned, digestion is going to change. So you're going to have some physical symptoms, hormonal patterns, as we've talked about, are changing, and immune function shifts. So we can't rely on motivation and we can't rely on pushing through this. What we have to do is understand that even though we're trying to do everything right, we might still feel completely exhausted because we're in this place of having pushed and pushed and pushed. And that complete exhaustion, that's a great symptom for us to really look at. I've taken vacation, I've slept, I've done all the things, but I'm still exhausted. What is going on? And downloading a mindset app, and I think they're great, don't get me wrong, but we've got to have that frontal cortex online for those to work. Trying to think our way out of this is like reading a book on productivity and healing a broken ankle. It's just, it's not gonna work. We've got to really understand the physiological pieces that we need to do, not trying to push through with performance.
And also from that somatic approach, because you also do somatic work, how important is it for women to stop and listen to your body and think what is changing? Why do I suddenly have trouble sleeping? And again, I'm going to use the word symptoms because that's what everybody's familiar with. But I can't sleep. I don't want to eat. I'm lethargic. I'm cranky. Somatically, I know it's important that we try to think about what's happening and where do I feel it in my body. And that's not something a lot of people are familiar with. And they don't often like to even do that. It's that people don't like to focus on the emotion and the feeling of it. But what are some things that women can do to actually bring themselves into that space and actually give a name to the feeling and the emotion that they're having?
That is such important work. And you're absolutely right. When I first start working with patients or clients and they say, "Oh, I'm so anxious, Julie." And I'm like, "Where are you feeling that anxiety?" And they don't
Mm.
know. They don't have a clue where they're feeling that anxiety. So as I try to train them how to get into their body, I just want to normalize for whoever might be listening. It is awkward at first. It feels very foreign because you're developing a completely new neural pathway to go in and understand, oh, now I need to feel my body. We're so good at being in our head. We're so good at that. It's safe. It's safe to be in our head. So things that I do with my clients, very first thing we're going to do is learn to do a full body scan. So, and Michelle, it's so important we approach this without judgment, without shame, just with a open, loving curiosity that let's just be curious. And so I teach them, and I'm scanning chakras. I might not talk to them in that moment that I'm scanning chakras, from the top of their head, their eyes, their throat, chest, tummy, sits bones, all the way down to their tippy toes, and bringing curiosity to any physical sensation. And that's where we start, just a physical sensation. You don't have to name it. And it's very important that the listeners understand there's no right or wrong. This is just trying to get data, just trying to understand. And lo and behold, and it's not one and done, this is a practice, right? And you're building that new neural pathway. But lo and behold, they slowly start opening up to that. Now, at first, it's very awkward. And I've even had some people get very irritated, like, I don't even know how to do this. It's not right or wrong. But as they start becoming familiar with that practice, they're able to get a lot of good data. Our body is so intelligent, so intelligent. And so many women I work with swallow their truth to keep the peace. And which is very hard on our throat chakra, ends up in our heart chakra. And where does resentment end up? In our heart. For years of taking care of everyone else, knowing their needs before they even know them. I love my husband, 35 years of wonderfulness, but that man cannot find a sock. And but I know where they're at. But so I work a lot with ladies on not feeling guilty for that resentment or shame. I think resentment is a sacred opportunity to learn more about yourself. We're giving so much and we're not filling ourselves. You know that myth that we can't pour from an empty cup? We do it all the time. We become the empty cup. So
Yeah.
as I'm trying to help them get embodied, a important practice, and your body needs to feel this, is to put your hand on the area you might have that feeling. Say, my chest is real tight. I don't know what's going on. Put your hand there breathe into it, bring softness and gentleness and curiosity, and just see what that spot on your body has to tell you. And you'd be surprised how much information we can get about our feelings and about, most importantly, what we need and how we can come off the survival state into the relaxed state. And the other thing that happens, and this has to do with the body, and it has to do with my next book too, when our brain, when our nervous system is in that survival state all the time, we send a signal to the brain, and its job is to conserve energy. And the first thing that's going to go is pleasure. The brain saying, well, we're just trying to survive, so pleasure goes. Well, that impacts your entire life if you can't plug into your pleasure. So um, we're trying to move people out of that flight, fight, or freeze into a thaw so they can feel again, so they're not numb. And you can't do that unless you get embodied.
And that's a really simple practice that for people who don't do any form of internal ritualistic practice, and then they're kind of like, oh, she's talking about meditation. It's like, well, no, we're not. What we're
No.
talking about is just find some time, not even every day, but find some time where when you are aware of yourself feeling any of these challenging type emotions, or, why have I got a headache, or why are my shoulders all cramped up, and take yourself away, make a cup of tea or whatever your favorite beverage is, and just find somewhere to go, close your eyes, and start at your head. And just, as you said, just do that scan. And then when you get, okay, so if you've got a headache, when you get to that headache, try to put a word to it. And
Oh,
then into
absolutely.
your neck, try to put a word to it. And don't, and as you said, not judging yourself is really important. And it doesn't matter if you feel awkward or silly. No one knows what you're doing except you. You don't have to explain yourself to anybody, and don't judge what's coming up, because when you do somatic work, it can make you very emotional. You might cry. You will
Absolutely.
have, that is perfectly normal. So don't feel like you've pushed yourself into a space that is scary, because those emotions coming to the surface when you're doing any sort of somatic practice is very, very normal.
Normal and so needed because you're carrying those emotions.
Mm.
So often, especially in my therapy practice, people want to short circuit and not feel the emotion. And you can't do that. It embeds itself in your fascia, in your tissues. You've got
Mm.
to get it expressed. And we think, oh, we'll ignore it and it'll go away. It doesn't. It just gets bigger. So feeling it, while it can be very uncomfortable, there's so much to be learned and can be so rewarding on that other side of getting it expressed.
And it's interesting that you use the word fascia. I was actually at a Qigong class the other day, and we were all having coffee afterwards, and we got talking about fascia and what is it and what does it do. So while you're on that topic, because maybe it's something I need to know about, because that's usually how things work for me, explain to the listeners, what is our fascia and why is it
Well,
so important?
yeah, well, I mean, it's our tissues, our emotions are when our nervous system is dysregulated, when all those feelings, they get embedded in our tissue. I mean, it's absolutely becomes part of us, and we have to learn how to express it, to let it, to release it. Uh, Therapy without somatic work, I just don't think you're just a talking head, right? You've got to get
Mm.
embodied with that. I think of fascia as just our tissues, our muscles, the part of our body that holds ourselves together, that we've got to get these emotions expressed so we can get our nervous system regulated, so we can come out of that survival mode all the time and into that relaxed state. Because when we're in a healthy nervous system, um, where the vagus nerve is regulated, our nervous system is regulated, we can flow back and forth from survival, where something might activate us and we need to take care of it, and then flow back into just relaxed state. That's the way we're made to, that's the way our nervous system is made to have that flow. But those of us that have been working, where the overachieving women have been stressed for so long, have decades of, oh, I just got to do this. You know, that tense, our pelvic floor stays tensed, which is why sex is a problem for some of us as we get older, because we've been chronically, just tensed up. So anyway, it's important to try and release these feelings through our body. We're not going to be able to do it. We can think all day and we're not going to think our way out of it.
No, that's true. So when people start to actually become aware, they're listening to that nervous system instead of pushing it down and overriding it. What are some of the first things that will become evident to them, which is sort of important because it allows them to then be validated that, okay, I'm doing what these people said for me to do. I'm sitting in my emotions and I'm crying and I don't know why. What are some of the things that start to then appear that allow people to go, okay, this is actually working, even though it's uncomfortable, it's working.
Right. I want to give a just a quick case study of a gal I was working with just last week. Had a lot of childhood trauma, very much an overachiever, just really had stacked himself on her. When we first started the body scan, she was so, it would irritate her. No,
Mm.
I don't know where what is. She finally allowed herself to practice that and that new neural pathway, 67 days to new neural pathway, it began to form for her. As we were exiting because she had done her work, she was telling me it is so different now. I have something happen. We slow down. Her capacity had expanded. It expands. She was able to take a deep breath. And for her, it was always her solar plexus and get in touch with her tummy. Okay, this is what's happening. Really ask her body, give it a name. What is it you need to tell me? Give her body, give herself what she needed and move through it. Instead of getting stuck in it, she moved through it. She said her quality of life felt so much better because she was back in touch with her body. So as your capacity expands, it's a steady thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It's steady, but you're going to reconnect with emotional range. You can feel without being numb or without being flooded, because those are kind of the opposite. That's a continuum, but that tends to happen. We either become flooded or we're just numb. And you have discernment. You can tell the difference between obligation and desire. Desire. You can feel that again. We've been, so many of us have been so busy, we forgot what desire even feels like. And choice comes up. You respond rather than react. And that's a big difference. That's some space opened up there. And I think the most important thing I could say, you feel alive again. Before I came back through my recovery, I felt dead on the inside, empty, but that aliveness, that's the soul joy I speak of. That aliveness comes back up where there's you just have moments of spontaneous joy and you're really present with those you love and you have the capacity to say, well, yeah, I'll host Christmas this year. I can't wait. Um, you just you come back online in a way that is very delicious.
And I think it's important too, you mentioned there that 67 days of for you to get your neural pathways sort of moving. This is not something that's going to happen in the first couple of hours, the first couple of days. It's something that you need to try and practice for quite a number of days, especially if you're resistant to like facing it, dealing with the emotions that it brings up, but just stay in there. Even if you do it sometimes and it falls over, it is what it is. Don't judge yourself. Just go, okay, that didn't work today. We'll try it a bit differently tomorrow. Maybe I'll pick a different time of the day, or I'll wait till I don't have 50,000 people wanting my attention. But it does take that 67 or so days for you to really start to change that pathway information. So it's a practice, which is what everything is. It becomes one of your normal practices. If you can get up every day and go to a gym or go and do yoga or whatever your thing is that you do, this just becomes another thing that you do as part of your practice.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
I can't remember the gal's name that did the research, but a book just came out called 67 Days to change a habit. And she's a neuroscientist, and she proved in 67 days that new neural pathway does form, and those old neural pathways start to dissipate. So I think that that's good information for us to have because we tend to want things fast, and having the patience and the self-compassion and the generosity to allow yourself time. And I promise there will be times it does not work. I absolutely promise. And that's absolutely
Oh,
normal. Absolutely normal.
yeah. Oh, well, even those of us that know how to do all these things, we have times where it doesn't work. Don't don't
Oh,
don't
sure.
think that don't think that yeah, just because we're talking about it that it changes for us. And it's also important too. I think one of the things that I pick up on for myself is just that ability to return to just finding joy, just to be able to sit there and as a joy gratitude type practice where you will just be sitting there aimlessly doing something and you'll just suddenly realize, oh my God, I'm so fortunate to be here. Or I'm
Yes.
so lucky that that just opened up for me. Or wow, I've suddenly realized I'm sleeping better. And, and again, it's the awareness, it's the curiosity, and also the acknowledgement of when the changes are happening. You know, actually take the time to go, okay, what's different? What am I feeling now that I didn't feel 5 days ago or last month? And acknowledge that and validate that for yourself. And if you're a journaling person, the day one that you start anything like this, regardless of what it is, make little notes because when you read back, that's where you'll see the changes and you actually forget. And then when you read back across a couple of weeks of what you've been doing and you go, oh, wow, I can actually see the difference that this has made for me.
Oh, such good advice. Such good
Mm.
advice. Because change is little baby steps. It's not one big thing, and we do lose
Mm.
sight of it.
Yeah, and it becomes like when we're implementing and embodying these practices, and the changes are subtle, and we often don't notice them until we look back on it with hindsight and in a collective, and we go, "Oh, yeah, actually, I am noticing that," and then that becomes your light bulb moment of,
Yeah,
"Wow, I need to keep doing this, and I need to look into how I can ramp that up and do it even more." And it does become
yeah,
addictive. I think any of those practices that bring that to you, you tend to then want to do more and more of so that you keep getting
right.
that. It becomes like a dopamine hit, I suppose.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to actually go back because when I was reading your bio, I just loved the name of your next book. So are we going to have sex or not? Because I know when I read that, there would have been a whole lot of listeners going, hey, what? You know, that I need that book. So even though it's not out yet, so when is it due to be released?
March 21st, it will be available on Amazon,
Oh,
and
cool. Okay.
it's a guide for women over 50 to embody and experience desire and joy in their life. And there's a lot of nervous system regulation in the book, because a lot of time, like I was saying earlier, when the brain is in survival mode, pleasure goes offline, and that absolutely messes up our bedroom. So there's a lot of I call it the radiance chapter. There's a lot of radiant stuff in there for the ladies. But and the title of the book, girl, of course, I've been married to my husband for 35 years. And we met in college. I'm older than he is. That's the first thing I said to him on our first date. I asked him that, and um, he's a little younger. Got him up to speed. But
So I'll mention that in the show notes so that everybody can remember what that's called and just keep watching Amazon until that gets released. And your other book, your 12-week guide to overcoming burnout, is that a book that if people are listening to this and going, okay, I really want to give some of this a go, does that guide actually provide some of this information and some actual practical things we can embed?
absolutely, yes. Every chapter, there's a lot to do. It's not a book you just read, it's a book you do.
Mm.
There's a lot to do in the book to help them get their nervous system regulated, to help them take it. I mean, in Bloom's taxonomy, from knowledge to application, and I
Mhm.
wanted it to be a very applicable book. So, And my website, I'm going to be starting a book club for both books where yeah, a monthly book club where people could come in and we can actually practice things in the books. And I have a pre-order waiting list for Are We Gonna Have Sex or What book? Just
Oh, all right,
FYI.
fantastic. So I'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes. So if anybody wants to take advantage of that, or if you want to reach out to Julie and just look at her research, look at the information that she's got on there, and look into this a bit more deeply, you can do that. So I just this conversation is so important, and I know in this podcast I have this conversation in so many different ways and means over and over and over, but I'm also really aware that certain people, that light bulb will drop in a particular way somebody else says it. So I'm more than happy to continually have these conversations with different people so that someone somewhere will resonate with that listener who's listening. So I really appreciate your time today and just how important it is around that reframing of exhaustion and disconnection and loss of access to ourselves. And it's really important, and this is something that I say in my work all the time, is that this is not failure. You are not broken. You don't have to start deep diving into those horrible places that are surrounded by those horrible words, which, you may not have even been clinically diagnosed as having. It's perfectly normal. And it's important to not look at it in that frame. It's important to just simply say, this is a part of a transition I'm going through. And what can I do to eliminate it or move it or just reframe for myself what it looks like, which is why I'm so hesitant to always use words like a symptom, because that indicates that it's an illness. And what we're going through in these transitional phases is not illness. It's just life. And I think for women, especially around the menopause conversations, we've always been made to feel like it's a terrible thing, it's a crisis, our life is falling apart. And that's actually so wrong, because it's not what it is at all. It's a time of our lives where we actually get to regroup, to celebrate ourselves, and I love the pagan rituals around the fact that we are now moving out of being the woman into the crone or the wise woman or whatever term you want to use. And I know now at 61, I feel like that. Like I actually can sit back and go, you know what? Yeah, I lived all that experience, but I would not be where I am and who I am now if I hadn't had that. And I celebrate that now.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important for women to start thinking about everything that they're going through in those terms. So for people who are listening, outside of all the information we've given them and the things we've said they can do, what's one thing you would suggest they could do? Maybe not the minute they hang up from this podcast, but maybe tomorrow morning when they've got a fresh day, or maybe on the weekend when they've got some time to themselves. What's the one thing they can do right now that could actually allow them to start moving into this space and feeling a change?
Sure. I'm going to say a micro rebellion, not a big one. We don't want to
I like
completely
that.
dysregulate nervous systems. And I know at 63, I'm living my best life. We've got so much
Mm,
juice. We've got so
mm.
much juice. So, micro rebellion. And this, for some people, they're going to think, Julie, that ain't nothing. And for other people, they're going to think, "Ah, I can't do that." But it's next time someone asks you to do something, you don't say yes, you don't say no, and it's not because we're trying to shove anyone off. This is for our nervous system. We say, let me get back to you. That is very important. That pause is a very important thing to teach your nervous system, that it's okay to pause and actually think about something before we react to it. When we've had years and years of appeasing and pleasing, and perhaps it's called fawning in the nervous system, it can be, you can feel like a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you when you set a boundary. It can be terrifying. That's your nervous system going, oh, we're going to be abandoned. Um, that's just a micro rebellion for your nervous system to just practice that pause. Just practice it. Just see what happens.
I've been having so many conversations this week with women of varying ages and situations. around just stop and don't rush. Just, this has happened for you. Take 5 minutes just to sit in this and think about why it's happening. And that's what we talk about, the difference between reacting and responding. Learning to respond is so important. And you learn to respond by educating yourself and training yourself to always just go, take a deep breath and just like let it all settle around me, even though you probably want to kill the person that's in front of you or you really want to deal with the situation. Just learning that capacity to just breathe and breathe deeply and breathe down into your diaphragm. So many people have lost that capacity.
Oh, they
Take a
shallow
deep,
breathe.
yeah, take a deep breath, let what's happening around you settle and respond. And sometimes respond means do nothing. Do
That's
absolutely
right.
nothing. Walk away, remove yourself, and give yourself the time to sit in that, whatever it is. So you can
Right.
listen to your decisions and make the decisions from your heart and not from your head.
And
Um,
if they feel a bit dysregulated when they take that breath, if they'll hum a little bit, that vibration will bring that
mm,
nervous, it helps to calm that vagus nerve down a little bit and bring it back to a regulated state. Breathing's
mm.
so important.
Yeah. And as I've said to so many people, and I say it to my clients, it's like, and you know what? When I say don't do anything, sometimes that means leave the room, leave the office, leave the building, go and stand in a park, go and have a glass of water, go and throw some cold water on your face, do whatever you need to do to bring yourself back to yourself. Then you
Yes.
actually allow yourself to have capacity to respond. Because when you don't, that's when you end up throwing yourself into something that normally you will step away from and go, damn, I wish I hadn't said yes to that, or damn, what did I put myself into?
Oh
And
my
then you
God.
start that loop conversation in your brain about how you could have done it differently, said it differently, and then that just throws you into turmoil again as well.
Right.
So yeah, that's really good advice. And I'm sure there's so many things that the listeners are going to take away from this. So I'll put as much information as I can into the show notes about what we've talked about. And thank you, Julie, so much for joining me. It's been a great conversation. It's a conversation I think so many of us are wanting to hear, and solutions that we can just go and do, which actually take minimal time, actually don't cost us anything because it's something we manage ourselves in whatever time frame we have available, which I think is such a barrier to women, is when they are offered solutions which come with a price tag. So
Right.
yeah, I think if we can find things that you can just do at home in the comfort of your own space, and maybe just Google a website, read a bit of information, listen to a podcast, things that don't cost you anything financially, I think are really important places to start. If you know other people that you think this information might be helpful for, please share this podcast, hit the follow button. If you have any extra things you want to know, you can drop a comment in the comments. And if it's something that you'd like to ask Julie, I can then get that across to her and she can follow that up for you. But thank you, Julie, so much for joining me. Thank you to everybody for listening. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, and enjoy your week and just find joy. Find joy in something. Make that your purpose in the next few days. Just take time for yourself and find joy. And I will be back with you in the next episode. Thanks, Julie, so much.
Thank you.